Everybody for joining. How are you?
Good.
Good, good. Yeah, this is a pretty massive event, it appears, although they've just reported 3,000 homes have been damaged. So we have seen that level of damage before, just not in Kentucky in that kind of a tight space. I think what I'll do is go ahead and open up the share screen. I'm glad you're all joining. Thank you so much. I wanted to sort of take this opportunity to brainstorm a little bit with you all because, this is a big event and it's across so many states, and there's an outpouring of desire to help and a need as well. So, rather than try to determine individually with each of you, let's think about this together. I hope that makes sense. Good. Okay. So I'm just watching folks joining. We've also invited Presbyterian Disaster Assistance. We've invited in Caroline with Disciples of Christ. We've invited in an individual who may have been impacted or knows of folks impacted in the candle factory. So, there may be some folks here that are outside of our particular network, just, to let you know. The candle factory, and Irene can speak to this in a little bit when we get to emotional and spiritual care, has of course, the number of death, but there are some folks that are related and have friends that have passed away through that event and are requesting emotional and spiritual care. So that is one of the reasons why we invited that person in, and hopefully she'll be able to join us. But not to delay here, I think we should just get started. So this is the severe storms coordination call among all of our CDCs. And we welcome you here to the call, unfortunately, under these circumstances. We're just going to go through a quick update on each of the states, and then we're going to take a look at some of our priorities, which is the cleanup kits, amassing a major challenge across the UCC, volunteer inquiries and how we might begin to handle that, funding and how funding may be processed, and then emotional and spiritual care planning. So welcome all of you that are just now joining. We are so glad you're here for this call. As you know, this was a huge a number of storms across the plains and into the Appalachian region, not quite hitting the mountains. And so we're still trying to gather information about what has exactly happened to the UCC churches, but this will be an opportunity to also hear from the Presbyterians and from Caroline with the Disciples. And I believe I'm not seeing everybody on the screen because of this presentation, so you all can help me to identify who we're missing and if I missed somebody along the way. But this looks like the path. So even up in Northern Ohio, we had impacts you see there, okay? So if you're not thinking about, well, it may not have hit us, Alabama got hit in just a little itty bitty place, but every impact is an impact. So there you go. And I will have this PowerPoint for you all later. These are the shelters that are open right now across the region of impact. And I know it's not real easy to see here, but this is the Red Cross, and you can go to redcross.org and find these shelter locations so that if you're having questions from your conferences, this is the best way to find that information. The other thing that I have is updates from the Salvation Army, which is also helpful. They've been getting out their canteens and working to feed and provide emotional and spiritual care. You can see some of the locations here that they've described. I think this was the Missouri and Arkansas update. And so, you know, if you're needing specifics, let me know, but this talks about the Amazon collapse and the work that they're doing in Edwardsville. Okay. I'm rolling through this pretty quickly so we have time to really chat and talk. So what we know about Missouri right now is Mary Nelson has been in touch, the conference minister. I'm sorry, I didn't mark her as the conference minister. Her associate conference minister made call down to all of the churches and actually learned of one member in New Mel, I think that's how you say it, Missouri, that lost some outbuildings with the farm, but that's about it. You know, the pastor heard any additional impacts, and all is well in Missouri as she indicated today. So now, Caroline, any impacts that you might have had in Missouri or Arkansas with disciples?
Not as far as we know. Our regional ministers have reached out in those areas, and it looks like folks fared all right. Excellent.
Wonderful news. And Kathy, are you guys aware of any Presbyterians that have been impacted?
I don't have all the information, especially where you're asking about Missouri and South Carolina. We do have, of course, have Kentucky impact, and when you get there, I can share a bit.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you. Okay, so just for those who are joining now, we're just going to go through some of the state impacts. Does anyone else have any awareness based on your relationships in Arkansas or Missouri that you'd like to share at this time? Okay, hearing none, we're going to move on, believing that maybe they dodged a bullet, but I know communities did not, and we'll need to do some more assessment. These are the cities and counties that have been impacted in Missouri. So this might help to narrow in, especially in our churches, our pastors, our pastoral leaders, our church educators, you know, St. Charles County, and then the Missouri Boot Hill region, and then Edwardsville, which we know is where the Amazon warehouse was located. Any questions or thoughts about Missouri?
One thing I'll chime in on, which is Illinois, but basically Missouri with Edwardsville, is we do have a disciples congregation in Edwardsville. They do not have any direct impact to their building or their people, but I'll be remaining in touch with them about providing support to those who were affected from the warehouse.
Terrific. Good. Thank you. That's helpful. Okay, in Illinois impacts, we have Priscilla and Roger on the line. Is Scott on too? I'm sorry, I just don't have the full list here. So let's start with either one of you. Priscilla, would you like to share any updates you may have with Southern Illinois Conference?
Well, the Amazon building disaster, there were 6 people killed. I think they've stopped their search for, they have all their employees accounted for and people accounted for. Several search and rescue people from my area here in Washington County and Nashville in particular have been involved in that. We have 4 of our churches in that area have minor damage. It's probably just wind damage, some trees, a lot of trees uprooted, some siding and some, you know, minor things, shingles and things. One, St. Paul, Edwardsville, UCC, they have one farm family that had several outbuildings destroyed, but not their house. So then they're insured. And there was two families. They're both insured and feel that they can take care of things on their own.
Okay. And so the four church, if you could list the four churches in, if you have awareness of those in the chat for us, that would be really
Okay.
helpful as we
Okay.
write up. We're writing up that situation report for the UCC this afternoon, and we'll submit it tomorrow. So it gives everybody time overnight to think about any other specifics we want to add to this large situation report we'll put together.
Okay. There's the tornado, it kind of dipped at the Amazon and then continued northeast. It did go over, we have a church, St. Paul, they call it the Bluff Church, in Edwardsville, on the outskirts of Edwardsville. And it went over there and then it dipped down again into a new subdivision and picked up one house and moved it a few feet and set it back down. But otherwise, this is basically a rural area and it continued on without hurting any other homes.
And it passed right over your house. You took,
Well, no, it's about 30 miles,
okay.
this one. The one a couple months ago came right over, but it didn't touch down. So we've been through this a couple times in the last 2 months, I guess.
Yes. Okay, thank you. So that's Southern Illinois. Roger, any updates you'd like to share?
We have had no reports of damage to any of our churches or individual church members. So our focus right now is to crank up as best we can a response by creating Church World Service kits, particularly buckets. We've got a major campaign this week. Our goal is between 500 and 1,000 buckets. We'll see how we do. That starts happening tomorrow.
Okay.
So that point is our extent.
That's wonderful. And I'd encourage everyone on the call now, everybody, right, to begin thinking about kit creation and cleanup buckets, because it's going to be depleted, and this is not the end of this weather pattern.
No.
This is just the beginning of this weather pattern. It's crazy how warm it is in the south and chilly in the north. And, that's the collision of tornadoes. So I'm not saying anything new to any of you. I know you know that. But
No.
if he's got a great challenge going in that conference, so you might want to chat with Roger. Or Roger, tell us about the challenge itself.
We have a source of buckets already within the conference. We have a church that happens to have members who have a company that makes ice cream, and most of their ingredients come in buckets. So we have about 200 right now without even contacting them, so that are available free. They're stored at our Pilgrim Park campsite.
Mm.
And we are combining that availability with a challenge to have every church try doing 10 buckets. Even if they can only do one, we're going to help support it, and encouraging all the who do the 10 bucket challenge to apply for the grant from National. And we've got a target starting this hopefully by the end of the year, as fast as we can get the information out. And then we'll store some of them at our a range of churches across the conference so we can get them to places more quickly. And that's pretty much the best description I can give you today.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you, Roger.
Leslie, I want to add the greatest need in Illinois South Conference is spiritual care. One of the persons killed in the Amazon building was a son of a member in a nearby church.
Son of a member, okay. Yes, and the spiritual care team is going to meet tomorrow and we'll be determining how best to support. And so you'll be on that list for sure.
Okay,
Thank
I'm
you.
sure there are people that were employees at that facility that,
We'll need it too.
yes.
Yeah. We also have Presbyterian Disaster Assistance on the line for that same reason, just listening in because they have emotional and spiritual care teams as well. So let me just pause a minute and any updates from Disciples on the Illinois impacts? If Caroline's still on,
Nothing else from me.
nothing else, okay. Anything from Presbyterians?
I don't have anything specific on Illinois. We have a team probably arriving today in the Kentucky sites, so we'll probably know more in the next few days.
Yes, okay. Thank you. Okay, let's move on then. Any questions from any of you all?
I
Okay,
just have one question. Is there going to be any kind of telephone or virtual support for folks that have been affected?
so the types of crisis counseling resources are already in place, of course, through SAMHSA. And that's the crisis counseling hotline that's always in play. And we can provide that information maybe in our update. How about, does that make sense?
Yeah, that'd be
Yeah.
great.
Okay, let's do that. That hadn't come to mind yet, crisis counseling. Okay. In Kentucky, let's go to Greg for updates in Kentucky.
Yeah, to talk specific about spiritual care, because that question came up at our conference a couple days ago, and talking to Angela Roberts, who is actually coordinating that effort in Kentucky. Right now, they're just wanting people in person, or at least that's what her coordination's about, is in person. And I have received some information from some of our UCC churches, one out of Missouri Mid-South Conference that offered her services. So I passed her name along to Angela yesterday evening. So that's about all I know about special care. I was in Kentucky today.
Before you move, before you
Yeah,
go
yeah.
on, I'm sorry, could
Yeah.
you also provide that name to us here through my office? That way I can connect her with the emotional and spiritual care team of the UCC.
Yeah,
as well.
certainly. Yeah,
Thank
I'll
you.
do that.
Okay,
Yeah,
great.
okay.
Thank you.
And I guess I was in Kentucky for another reason yesterday and this morning, and lost my train of thought.
I'm sorry.
I was working with that spiritual care group because I had enough clothes with me to go to Mayfield if they needed me, because at that time they were looking for some volunteers to go and work with the coroner's office over there. And it turns out they had enough, what I would say more professional than myself, staff that was able to cover those areas. So I excused myself from that group and now working in the disaster recovery group more. As far as
Yeah.
Kentucky is concerned, there were initially eight counties declared. There could be up to a total of 22 counties that had major damage. So I understand the president's going to visit the sites tomorrow, Mayfield tomorrow, to get a hands-on evaluation there. As far as our churches, most of our churches in Kentucky border the Ohio River. There's an exception. We have two churches near Lexington. Bluegrass is in Lexington, and then there's I think it's First Congregation is in, our Union is in Via, which is south of Lexington. Mostly our churches are either Henderson, Owensboro, Louisville. There was a church the building was sold, I think last year. It was in Paducah, Kentucky. We do have a congregation down there, but my understanding is they meet in a different church for worship. Talking to our conference minister, Chad Abbott, no one in our congregations were affected by this storm directly, or not churches nor congregants.
Great. I mean, that's good news for us. Let's maybe turn for a moment then to Caroline. Any updates you may have for Kentucky?
Yeah, Kentucky's a stronghold for disciples. It's our birth home state. So we have 22 congregations at last count along the path of the main impact. Amazingly, only one of those churches sustained significant damage. If you watch the Today Show, you saw that congregation. First Christian Church of Mayfield has been completely flattened. Of our 22 congregations, at this point, about 60% are reporting direct impact among their members, and with home damage ranging from minor to destroyed. And those reports are still trickling in as communications continue to be a little spotty in some areas. We have a number of churches that are already doing some community outreach, and mostly continuation of kind of the programs they already do, feeding school children who are not in school and therefore not getting their lunch programs, opening pantries and those kinds of things, as well as opening as warming shelters. First Christian Church in Bowling Green is hosting cleanup teams through an organization called Hope Force International. And our churches in Madisonville, First Christian Madisonville, and Katie's have offered their spaces for volunteers. Both are set up pretty well to host teams. Katie's is smaller and only has one shower. Madisonville, I think, has 2 showers and capacity for a larger group to stay, have kitchen space available. A number of our congregations across the state of Kentucky have expressed willingness and interest to get supplies where they need to go, collect supplies, or put teams together to help. Right now, our message is hold on, get yourselves organized. We'll let you know what supplies are needed in the coming weeks, as most of the communities have been telling us, we don't need you in here right now. And they don't have a place for supplies yet in most of the affected communities. Our communications and marketing manager, whose last day is actually Friday, because Greg, I'm going to connect her with you. She's about to start pastoring a UCC church in Louisville. She is there today with our regional minister on pastoral visit to a number of our affected congregations. So I'll have some more detailed information from them later today, I hope.
Well, we're sorry to hear of the church impacts there, and we're here to support that effort and want to collaborate as much as we can with you. Questions for Caroline before we go on to Presbyterian? Kathy. Okay.
I don't have a question for Caroline, but I have a comment. When I heard yesterday on the Kentucky Boyd call, you mentioned there were 2 churches, the one in Madisonville and the others in Katie's would house volunteers. That was very, very interesting to me, because I think we can put teams together, but we didn't have a place to stay. So I'll be in conversation, I'm sure, with you when the time's right for us.
Great. Yeah, I'm definitely anticipating a long-term recovery volunteer effort through our office. But we would love to have partners for cleanup as well. If you have teams that are equipped to do that, or you know of other ecumenical partners, because I know we have folks in the area that would like to be part of cleanup as well.
Thank
This
you.
is Tom Davis. I have an additional comment for you. I actually served the Dawson Springs Church for 8 years. And that church, I think, the building doesn't look like it's been touched at all. Right across the street is the school with the potential for showers. This is a very open community, and if there's any way to make contact with the leadership there, I am sure they too would house volunteers. I feel confident, but I'm not sure.
That's great to know. We've been in touch with Pastor Mike. I wasn't aware of the school across the street, so that's good intel. They were still in the process of checking in with all their people, and you're right, the church was not damaged. So good to know. Thank you.
It's been really hard to reach people that I do know, so I'm still kind of working on that. And lastly, just for your information, Melanie and I are headed to Nashville right now. Her mother's funeral will be on Saturday, but we're taking our time getting back, so just kind of put that in there.
Thank you. Thanks. Safe travels to you.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so Kathy, any updates you'd like to share now with us around your Kentucky responses?
Sure, a couple things. Thanks for having me, Leslie. It's good to be partnering with you all. I was on that call with Angela Roberts that was mentioned earlier, and so kind of on their mailing list in case they need help. They talked about sort of 2 weeks, they think, of active response, but luckily there are enough behavioral health specialists, I think, in the community that they're kind of covered for the moment, and they'll be looking at, of course, that crisis counseling grant and getting SAMHSA in. We in PDA, Jim Garrett, whose name is at the bottom of the slide that's currently up, is of course with emergency management, VOAD, and he's a PDA member, so he's a great contact. We, First Presbyterian Church Mayfield was basically destroyed. And my understanding is their pastor had unexpectedly passed away a few months ago. So we have been called in by our middle governing body, and we've got a team there today of 2. They'll be there through at least Monday. And so doing assessment, just gathering information, finding out what the needs are, both with Presbyterians and the larger community. So we'll know more, as they report in these next few days. And we in PDA, are available for some limited in-person deployments. So happy to stay in the conversation as we learn more about the needs for emotional spiritual care. That's my role with PDA, as well as all the other kind of responses that we're hearing about. So we will know more with that team on the ground, and happy to stay in touch and be available if there are needs for emotional spiritual care, either virtually or in person. We're ready.
That's great. Thank you so much for the partnership. And let me just open it up to others on the call, and whether Irene, your guest, might be on the call. Just wondering.
Yeah, hi Leslie. Thanks everyone for coming together to respond to this and to all you do. So I am just randomly part of a Kentucky Moms group. They are based mostly out of Western Kentucky, and so I've just gotten some information about what their needs are and some of the folks in leadership who are asking for help. And so they have one point of contact who says that she needs emotional and spiritual care, because a lot of the women in that group and the people in general had someone in their family or friend group or themselves who worked in that candle factory. So that is a definite need that they're asking for. And then also it looks like Greg has also been looking for housing, a place to sleep. And so they're asking if there's people that have done this sort of disaster work that can help guide them through that process. Of course, I directed them to the American Red Cross as well as FEMA. But, the more trained and knowledgeable hands, the better. So that's the folks that I've been talking to. And then also one of them joined us on this call, and she has experience in disaster relief. She's been helping with the relief effort or the response effort at the candle factory. Jennifer, are you still with us?
I sure am.
Hi, Jennifer. Do you mind updating this group a little bit about what you think the needs are and how this group can plug in? Thanks for coming.
Yeah, great. Thanks for inviting me. Okay, so Mayfield, luckily, the entire region is covered by the Community Mental Health Center called Four Rivers Behavioral Health. And of all the counties, that's the county, that's the city where the crisis unit is. And so luckily we do have crisis services available there at Mayfield in a building that was not touched. There was no damage there. And also our substance abuse treatment facility. I shouldn't say our, I used to work for them, I don't anymore. The substance use treatment facility is also there. It's a residential facility. So those two are some kind of pros that we have because there's a lot of mental health professionals that come in and out of that facility that can do assessments and things like that. And all the officers and all of the counties are already aware of bringing people in crisis to that facility for assessment should that need to happen. So that's kind of nice that the centralized location is kind of going to be accessible for the people that need it there on the ground, whether that be people that were affected or now, you know, eventually responders. Okay, so I think that they are getting quite overwhelmed with people flooding in and trying to help. They're trying to figure out a way to organize. So like everybody's been saying, this is definitely going to be a long-term thing. Saturday when I was there, I was at the candle factory and we were just on the very perimeter trying to look at rescue recovery efforts at that point. So I believe that all of the candle factory victims or employees, I should say, have been identified and located. So I don't think that they're looking for any further remains at that point. But there's a lot going on there. I will say that it was quite the impact because there are so many people focused on that area, and the chemicals and the smell of the candles has been kind of lingering. I mean, I was only there for a few hours, and it's permeated everything, and you can still smell it days later. And I know that the people working that are going to be having the similar issues, as well as everything's dyed red from the chemicals. Their hair is red, just stained from in the air, things like that. So that's going to be something that just to kind of look out for people having triggers with those things, because that's flowing through the area. There are several different relief efforts that are just kind of flooding in, but the centralized location is through Catalyst Church. It's over by the CFSB Center, and they are the main ones where you can check in and they can try to send you for assignment for what you need to do, trying to organize volunteers and things. They desperately need people at the fairgrounds to sort donations. They're asking for new clothing only at this point, but there's lots and lots of donations at the fairground that are going to be flooding in, and they need people to sort that. Do you have any other specific questions as far as, you know, on the ground in Mayfield that I can answer?
Does anyone have any questions for Jennifer? Jennifer, thank you for joining us. Thank you for the work that you're doing. And we're here as the UCC Presbyterians and Disciples of Christ to support those efforts as
Wonderful.
you learn about them. I have my contact information at the bottom slide, so don't hesitate to reach out anytime.
Wonderful. Thank you. Same.
Yeah,
I'll give my information to Irene to make sure that anybody that needs it has it, just because I'm so close by.
sure. Or if you would like to put your information in the chat, I'm sure there'll be several folks on this call that would benefit by connecting with you.
Great. I'll be glad to do that. Now, another thing to remember in Kentucky is we do have the benefit of having the Kentucky Community Crisis Response Board. So that's a multi, I'm sure, are you all familiar with it? I don't know if I'm preaching to the choir here.
Go right ahead. Please do share.
Basically, it's just a group of people from lots of different avenues, lots of different professions that provide mental health services. It's police officers and firefighters and pastors and mental health workers, and just basically anybody that wants to come together to provide those services. Because I think, as we all know, the people in crisis, especially if they're the officers, the responders, they're not going to come all the time and want to speak to random therapist or random person, but they like to speak to people that are kind of already in their own profession. So people that are not affected or coming from the non-affected areas are the ones that are going to be coming in to volunteer for that. I will say also that the local Red Cross there in Mayfield is struggling also. So I don't think you're going to get a whole lot of direction through that specific board. I think it's mainly going to be run through the Paducah area chapter of the American Red Cross.
That's the number,
And I have some contacts with them also.
meeting
So
ID.
I can put that in there.
Super, that's great. Questions, other questions or comments or?
Leslie, this is Coral Parmenter in
Yes.
Nebraska.
Yes.
I just fielded a phone call from the moderator of the church that I serve here in the Sandhills. She is the newly installed president of the Nebraska Cattlemen's Association.
Mhm.
She wanted to let me
Mhm.
know that
Yeah.
the Nebraska Cattlemen Foundation has received a request from the Kentucky Cattlemen's Foundation for help,
No.
whether it's
Hold on just a
donation.
minute. Coral, hold on just a second. Someone has an open mic and we're hearing your conversation. There's someone with an open mic.
I'd forgotten what it's
We're
like to
hearing
drive.
a man and a woman talking to each other.
Gentle.
Leslie, you can.
I
mute
think I hear
everyone.
Roger,
Is it Roger?
I
Okay.
think.
Thank you. So Roger, open mic. Okay, go ahead.
Okay.
I'm so sorry to interrupt you.
That's okay. I just have information here. Because obviously we focus on the people and what you see on the news, of course, is the urban community. But there's apparently sizable or considerable damage within the agricultural area, the rural towns. And of course, Kentucky is prime horse country. So the Kentucky Cattlemen's Foundation reached out, I'm assuming to all of the Cattlemen's Association. Of course, I'm only going to hear from the Nebraska one. I've got information if people want to make donations, whether monetary, they can do it through PayPal or sending a check. And then there's materials, for farm type supplies. So I can forward that to you or to individuals as they need it. She knew I had this call today and she wanted me to have the information as soon as she got it.
Wonderful, sure. And if you want to go ahead and put it in the chat too, we can use the
Okay.
funding. That's so helpful. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Other comments or updates that you'd like to share about Kentucky before we move on?
Yes, Caroline, I just wondered if Jennifer, if you're still on the line, if you have details about how interested volunteers connect at the fairgrounds. I don't want people just showing up.
She had to take off, but I will relay that question to her. Thank you, Caroline.
Thanks, Irene.
Okay, great. All right. And then the Kentucky VOAD coordinating calls, as you see here, are open. And Greg is supporting those. I was on it for a very brief time today. Just wanted to let you know if you wanted to listen in. We did get a list of needs from the school district from Bryce. Thank you, Bryce, for doing that. Any comments you want to make about this list? Okay, then these were the things they were asking for yesterday. So we may want to double check and make sure, but just wanted to pass that on to you. Okay, Kim, I think we'll dig into some of your states now. Would you like to provide an update? Still here? Kim Wood? Maybe not. Okay, so these are the things I learned from Kim today, that Mississippi fared well. and experienced some of the early paths, but nothing that impacted. And also the communities in Tennessee, we're monitoring so far those reports of those communities, churches are located, were not directly hit, as you can see here. And the Nashville and Cookeville churches are somewhat close to Wilson County. And so this may be a place where some recovery can continue to occur. Of course, Waverly was impacted just slightly with downed trees, but thank goodness they didn't have to go through another round of impacts and trauma. So that's what we know about Tennessee. And the Tennessee VOAD is meeting regularly. This is information for you all there. And they do have a way of volunteering. So if there is an interest in volunteering, this is the information. Again, I'll send this PowerPoint out to everybody afterwards. Questions about Tennessee and the Southeast Conference?
This is Priscilla. I have a friend here who has relatives in Sandburg, Tennessee, Reelfoot Lake area, and Tiptonville. And she's telling me that those areas were pretty hard hit.
Tiptonville?
Yeah, Sandburg, Reelfoot Lake, and Tiptonville, Tennessee.
Tennessee. Okay, gotcha. Since we don't have a lot of churches there, of course, you know,
Right.
we'd be responding probably through grants and, you know, maybe through volunteerism as well. But thank you for that. And I'll
Right.
definitely make sure to report that out to the Tennessee VOAD. Any Tennessee or any updates in the Southeast area from Caroline?
We've had minimal impact in Tennessee. One household that had severe damage from a tree falling. Other than that, they're preparing to respond to Kentucky.
Good. And it sounds like the Presbyterians are focused on Kentucky. Anything in Tennessee you want to report?
I don't have anything to report. I know we've got people attending to VOAD meetings and keeping track of things, but at this point, I don't have any knowledge of anything that we're doing for a response in Tennessee.
Okay. If anyone would like to volunteer to help us listen into phone calls, as the phone calls are going to increase with long-term recovery organizing and other things like that, please let Greg and I know in Kentucky, of course, and then for all the other states, if you don't mind, just letting me know. Yes, I'd be willing to listen into some of these VOAD calls and report out as we go along throughout the disaster. Good. Okay, let's take a moment now to talk about emotional and spiritual care activation and doing that in collaboration with the Presbyterians and maybe others, it sounds like. We've already heard about the Candle Factory. I don't think Lynette joined us, but we have Martha and Fred and Tom, and I'm not sure if Rob's on the line. Martha, having heard all of this, do you have some initial thoughts on the emotional and spiritual care team yet, or?
I'm sorry, I had to go in and out of this for some other stuff. I think what I'd like to do is have a conversation tomorrow about this and come together with a plan, because since we have not gotten totally up to speed yet, I think that it's important that we do move ahead as quickly as we can with using the skill sets of people that we already know. And I'm thrilled to work with Kathy on this, so.
Very good. Okay, so a call tomorrow, and then Kathy will keep you up to date for sure on, well, when that call is, or at least a follow-up.
Good,
Okay.
thank you.
Yes.
And Leslie, I'll be happy, you know, as our team learns more to, you know, communicate with you, and however that works, we'll definitely stay in touch.
Perfect. Wonderful. Let's make that across the board, I'll do the same. I'm sure Caroline, you'll do that, and we appreciate that partnership. Okay, other comments or thoughts about the emotional and spiritual care team activation?
Leslie, I just wanted to report that I did put Angela's information in the chat, so it's available to anybody to see.
Excellent, thank you. And did you say, Greg, there are four, is it 4 or 5 working groups, or, you know, separate groups that are
Well-
meeting? How does that work?
Well, they're breakout rooms, and we meet at 3:30 each day, and then the Kentucky BOAD. It's actually set up through Kentucky BOAD meeting. They just started 30 minutes early, and then you can select the breakout room you want to go in.
Would you like a representative, if anybody's available and interested, to serve on each one of those, and then maybe provide, you know, our representation there at those calls?
Oh, that would be fine. Obviously, I was in the spiritual care and I moved to the repairs,
Okay. So
those donations and that. So other ears would be helpful to hear what's going on.
I think so too. So if you are interested in volunteering to listen in for the next few days, you know, we're not talking about a long-term commitment here, just the next few days at 3:30 Eastern time. Why don't you go ahead and put that in the chat, and we'll pick it out from there, or contact Greg and myself. Any other thoughts as we move on to crisis cleanup call center support volunteers? So this crisis cleanup, as most of you know, is a virtual website that individuals can call into that hotline, the 800 number you see posted there, and indicate that they have had an impact in their home and need support in cleanup. And I believe still that the crisis cleanup folks need help with the call center, receiving calls and logging those calls into the site, so that the map is then readily available for voluntary agencies who want to come and claim those individual homes. So Greg had organized something for the last impact in Kentucky. Would you like to update us a little bit on how this works, this crisis cleanup call center?
Just basically you sign up as your organization, which mine was the Indiana Conference, and then anybody that wants to volunteer to take these calls will get an invite, or I give them an invite in my case, and then they go through a short training video. I think it's about 9 minutes, and then you just start taking these calls and recording the data. You actually call those that have their personal information, address, things like that. Nothing like Social Security or anything, but a phone number for contact and address, and then they tell you what their damage is or has been. And there's categories that you just kind of check off. And then at the end, you can also add your own. My experience, I spent about 20 minutes per call with each client. So that's what it, but it's, and I'll say one thing further, the conversation I've had today, or as I have right now, is that they're not getting people to call, go into the calls, so that, the peers who are taking these calls, I think they have
Breaking up a
under
little bit.
a hotline. They're trying to get more of that information out to those affected. Part of the problem is there's very poor communications in some of those areas because there's no electricity. So I think they're hand carrying now pamphlets to folks.
Okay, good. Any thoughts or questions about crisis cleanup? It can be done anywhere in the country. As a volunteer, you can support that call center from wherever you are.
And the other interesting part of that, that's a good point you make, is that when you sign into the call center, you pick which disaster you're wanting to take calls from. It could still be from Ida, could have been from the wildfires in California, or now the Midwest floods or the tornado. So
Yes.
yeah.
A great way to do non-contact volunteerism.
Mhm.
And I think, maybe we ought to begin promoting that across the UCC, if you agree. Yeah, so.
Yeah,
okay.
and the other thing, the advantage of that, if I may just spend a moment on it, is they populate a map. And then when teams go in to do work, they can see what work has been yet needs to be done and what work has already been done, plus the type of work that needs to be done, whether it's roofing or trees or so your team volunteers may be good at muck out, but they may not want to cut down trees. Or
Emily was preaching Sunday, leading worship, and as she concluded her reflection, she collapsed with a massive heart attack.
And that's Roger talking about someone that, would you like to share that information, Roger? We've just heard you share that. I believe that he was talking about his sister. So prayers should be extended here. Okay. Whew. Okay, it's hard to move on with the subject of fundraising here. And we are not doing any particular fundraising for this event. We are continuing our Severe Storms 2021 appeal. So it just continues. We don't necessarily set up a new appeal. We will update what we are currently doing. And donations, of course, in support of the weekend. So Kathy, you have your hand up.
That's because I forgot to take it down from way earlier.
Okay.
I'm good, thank you.
Well, I'm sure you're also raising money and will be working collaboratively, possibly on the long-term recovery efforts. So
Right.
I'll be interested to talk with you about that too.
Sure, we do have an appeal that just went out today for this disaster with PDA.
Wonderful. Other comments about the funding and questions? We receive questions here a lot about fund, how do our organizations, could you push this information out, everybody, today through your conferences? So your conference ministers know, and that your whole network of, your newsletters and so forth. Would you all be willing to do that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Great. Thank you so much. We have a disaster email. It's disasters@ucc.org. And I'm kind of leaning towards using this email address for Times activations, disaster activation information sharing back and forth, so that a number of people on the team can continue to monitor the email, even when I'm away, which I was for the last few days. So if you are so inclined to just add disasters@ucc.org to how you inform us, that would be greatly appreciated. And certainly externally, we'd like to use this more often. So that's just an update. Okay, other thoughts or questions as we end our time together, and hope this has been helpful.
Leslie?
Yes.
Hi, this is really great, and it's amazing how much information you put together and gathered so much together in such a short time frame. So thank you, especially when you were out of the office. But so I did want to make everyone aware that we stumbled across something as Roger and I were working on this appeal for cleanup buckets through our local Home Depot. And it's certainly worth looking into. The Home Depot apparently has a foundation, and you can work with your local Home Depot HR department, and they will actually apply for funding. So we have an application in right now that actually went in, not knowing what was going to be happening. The application literally went in on last Friday, they were willing, when we said, well, we wanted to pack 20 buckets, they said, well, that's pretty small. He said, how about 50? and so we put in a grant application for $3,700, and we don't know whether we're going to get it because it's late in the granting cycle. But if it doesn't come through this year, we are going to resubmit January 1st in the new year. So it's certainly worth keeping in mind. And they seem to be really looking for projects like this, because we sent over the Church World Services list of supplies, and they found all the SKUs that they would use to pack those buckets, and they put that list together themselves. So
Wow.
they'll work with you very closely and help you put your, get your supplies together. So I'm just putting that out there.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank
Sure.
you so much, Scott. And as we've been working on the profiles, the conference profiles, now is a good time to go back and look at that again and just remind yourselves. This week, we were hopeful to have all the videos completed. So this is, I'm back. So those of you who need to talk more one-on-one, I think Davina and we need to talk, and others, let me know. We are very hopeful to get those all in before the holiday hits. And Fred has been doing a terrific job. Fred, would you like to take a moment just to say something about your work there?
Well, the work is so much easier than writing a sermon, first of all. And basically, I have been interviewing, or all I do is just connect with people, as some of you know, and I record your 2-minute spiel and I put it into the PowerPoint, and I'm done. I've never felt ever like it's so good about getting something from an individual and then I'm done. So it's actually a wonderful project. And I think especially for people who knew CDCs, to be able to see the excitement in people's voices as they talk about various aspects of their ministry, I think it's going to be amazing. It will probably be, I don't know, maybe 45, 50-minute program, PowerPoint. So it's not like you want to give that to the conference ministers right away. I think we need to shorten it up just to build the interest. But then if the CDCs are interested in making a presentation at their association meeting or their conference meeting, hopefully it will be a very good thing to be able to use. The one caveat to all of this is normally in a PowerPoint, you always put notes. When you show something, there won't be any notes. So it's not like you can just show it without going through it. You have to go through it and add your own notes with each of the various slides and videos.
Okay.
So that's it.
Thank you. Thank you. And in terms of volunteers, I wanted to give Elena, if you are available, Elena, a moment to talk about the newly updated, yeah, there you are. Okay. The newly updated protocols for the volunteerism and just how we're beginning to move in that direction too.
Absolutely, yes. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for a moment at the microphone, Leslie. I just updated our COVID protocols publicly today after getting approval from our team leader. We had been on an advisory that people hold on doing mission trips. And volunteer ministries in the UCC, we do individual volunteerism and we do group volunteerism via mission trip programs. And so that advisory is lifted and we've published advice to mission trip groups about how to conduct their volunteer mission trips in a COVID safe manner. And the basic thing is we advise vaccination and boosters and masks, and we choose to really advise that the volunteer be sensitive to the agency with whom they are volunteering. We are aware that some agencies will have their own policies, which our volunteers need to follow. So that's all in the sort of vein of advise and recommend. When it comes to a partner in service, which is a full-time individualized volunteer working with a UCC credential, meaning they have our name behind them, we do require vaccination. Any exemption to a vaccination would be entertained by the team, and the door is wide open for that. One thing I will say, and this is partly because Leslie has made some funding available, we advise that mission trip groups obtain a travel insurance rider. Now, these are not expensive, but it is a hoop for some groups. And travel insurance companies are offering COVID specific riders right now. So if you're taking a group on a trip, and Leslie said that there will be some funding available. So if you have a mission trip group and you know they're coming to work in your conference and they're getting all snarled up and nervous about how to handle these things, that's one benefit that Leslie has made available. So we just don't, we want people to be as safe as possible. And, if you feel sick, stay home is always the basic thing, right? And we're just really grateful. We've got some amazing partners in service in action coming back and bringing things back online. And some of our organizations are ready to receive groups. So it's a good time. Feels like things are waking up again. And of course, the need is always there. So if you have any questions, all of that's at ucc.org under volunteer ministries. And Leslie and the whole team and I are happy to be available to you because we just so appreciate what you do.
Mhm. Thank you.
That's it from me, unless there are any questions.
Questions, anybody? Greg, did you have your hand up or was that just, okay? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, actually, it was a question for Fred. Because you and I, Fred, we're supposed to get together because I've got my my spiel ready to record, but I'm not sure if I'm supposed to do it on my own personal Zoom account and send it to you, or if you want to set up a Zoom account and then I give it. So
Either way, isn't it?
yeah, I just need some direction.
Greg, for whatever reason, I didn't see that request, but what's easiest is for me just to send you a link to log on. We just have to figure out our schedules. And once you do your spiel, I record it, it's on my computer, and then I edit it afterwards, just to make sure that it's around 2 minutes.
I'll be looking for that link. Okay.
It will go out after we're done today.
Super. I'll get it to you this week.
Okay. Let me see. There was somebody else. Anyone else that has any other updates, any other comments? Any other concerns or questions? We sure appreciate Kathy and Caroline being on today too. I think they've dropped off now. The most important thing about, gathering information in times of disaster is what to gather. And so today we put together a little list of the things that it might be helpful when you're gathering information, what it is, that we need in order to write up our stories. So if that's all right, I'll send that all to you and you can take a look at it and add to it or subtract from it, tell me, no, this isn't quite right. But that we're getting to a point now where I think we're sophisticated enough that we can write up some pretty telling stories about the events that we're monitoring. So thank you all for that. Kevin, you and I are going to stay online for just a minute, maybe? Good. Okay. Any other thoughts or comments? Would someone like to close us with prayer today?
I would be glad to, but before I do that, I wanted, there was no mention of the Salvation Army in any of the tornado, and they are very responsive in the Northeast.
We actually had a slide the second slide, after Red Cross, I did a little bit about the Salvation Army. So yes, they are wonderful, and we are in touch with them on a regular
Great.
basis. Yes, absolutely, and partnering. I hope having the partners on today was helpful. And I hope to be able to do that on a more regular basis, maybe even expand, to the people we've talked to this year. I mean, we say we want a partner, so let's do it, right? So for some reason, Bryce couldn't get in. Maybe someone could help Bryce get online here. As we're closing out, I can't figure out why he can't get in today. Anything else?
Leslie, if I may comment, I had to sign in. I normally don't have to do that, but I had to sign in with my own personal account for me to get into this meeting, which is unusual.
I
So I
had
don't
to
know.
sign in too.
That's also true for Bill and Ellen here in Pennsylvania. We could not get in either.
So something got changed because they wanted to do a recording of this. And so I don't know if maybe they changed some of the settings. Normally, you wouldn't have to do any of that on the settings that I had before, but that meant I didn't record the meeting. Okay, I'll change it back. I promise. We won't meet again, I don't think, unless there's something really major that happens between now and the first of the year. So as you close, I want to wish you all the very best with your families and friends during the holiday season. And thank you so much for the volunteer work that you do for the United Church of Christ. Fred, go ahead.
Gracious and loving God, as we gather today with your blessing, continue to bless us that we might see clearly, to help those out in need. We give you thanks for Leslie's leadership. We give you thanks for everyone who is making a difference in this broken world. And we say all that with joy in our hearts. Just being able to serve you is awesome. We say this in your name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Okay, here to serve.
Thanks, Leslie. Merry Christmas,
Leslie.
everybody.
Yeah, Merry Christmas.